So with the midterm elections coming up, imagine walking into your polling place or to your polling place and seeing armed federal agents standing nearby. Would that make the election to you feel more secure? Or would it make voters feel like they're being watched or pressured or possibly intimidated? And that question it's more than just being theoretical. So Axios has reported as of the 16th that Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche declined to clearly rule out sending federal agents, including ICE agents, to polling places, saying that he would follow the law. Now, that answer has raised concerns because federal law already places very serious limits on armed federal presence at elections. So, what's the civics question here? What's the question worth asking? Can federal agents patrol polling places? The short answer here is generally no, not in the way people would usually mean. American elections are mostly run by state and local officials. They're handed down to the states by the Constitution. So your polling place is usually staffed by local election judges, poll workers, county clerks, and state election authorities. That's all part of the leveling that is federalism, like the national government, the state governments, and how the state governments then farm out their power. The federal government does have a role to play in elections, of course, because it can enforce voting rights laws, it can investigate voting intimidation, it can prosecute elections crimes, and in certain circumstances, federal observers or Justice Department monitors can be present to make sure voters are not being discriminated against. But that's different from armed federal agents patrolling the polling places. And federal law is quite cautious about that. There's one law that makes it a crime for federal officials to bring troops or armed men to a place where an election is being held unless force is necessary to repel armed enemies of the United States. Other federal laws prohibit intimidation, threatening, coercing people, who are trying to vote. Now, there's history in that, and all that history matters. And a lot of this, it goes back to the Civil War, right? Because immediately following the Civil War, federal power was sometimes used to protect black voters from violence and intimidation, especially in the Jim Crow South. But Americans, they've really long feared the use of military or armed government power to influence elections. And that's why the law tries to protect two things really at the same time. One is election security, of course, and the other one is voter freedom. And those two are not the same thing. A secure election is not just an election where fraud is prevented. It's also an election where eligible voters can cast ballots without fear. That is why the presence of armed agents near polling places is so very sensitive. Even if officials say the goal is enforcement, voters may experience it as intimidation, especially immigrant communities, minority communities, or people who already distrust government power. Now, this doesn't mean that law enforcement can never respond to a real threat. If there is violence, something like a bomb threat or an active danger or a specific emergency, law enforcement may have a role to play. But routine federal patrols at polling places are a very different issue. So, can federal agents patrol polling places? As a routine matter, no. Full stop. Federal officials may enforce election law and protect voting rights, but an armed federal presence at polling places risks crossing the line into intimidation. In a republic, voting must be both secure and free, because a ballot cast under fear is not the same thing as a ballot cast freely. And in light of things that are going on right now, I just felt like this was an important one to address. It may not be a large-scale question, but it may be just one of those things that makes I wonder. And so I've served as an election judge in several elections, and it's never really come down to. I live in a rural community, right? So it's never really come down to problems with having armed agents at any of them. Every once in a while you get a problem with electioneering, where someone tries to wear a hat or a t-shirt or a button within the polling place, but we've never really had to worry about having armed agents at any of our places. So anyway, I look forward to your responses and see if we can get a dialogue going on this one. Thanks a lot.